The airfield prepared for its toughest test. Lead pilot Ava Hartley, famed for her flawless record, exited briefing. When co-pilot Ethan Cole was announced, Ava froze. Ethan appeared in worn gear boots, scuffed hands stained. Her voice ice. "I won't fly with him. A single dad juggling childcare is not focused." Laughter rippled. Ethan, accustomed to judgment, tightened his helmet. A young pilot, Archie Reynolds, snickered. Ava turned away. Then Ethan spoke, his voice low and sharp, silencing the hangar. "If you knew who I was, Captain, you wouldn't say that." A quiet challenge, hinting at secrets deeper than anyone suspected. Ethan Cole, a man of 36 years, navigated a life defined by quiet sacrifice and relentless exhaustion. He and his 8-year-old son Liam resided in a small utilitarian apartment nestled on the fringes of the base, a testament to the 3 years since his wife Amanda had passed due to sudden medical complications. His days unfolded as a tightly orchestrated ballet of duties, his primary visible occupation that of an aviation maintenance technician at a private hangar. His secondary unofficial role involved flying contracted hours, a desperate measure to painstakingly maintain his critical flight certifications. Ethan's world revolved with unwavering precision around Liam's schedule, morning school drop-offs followed by hours of demanding maintenance work where he labored beneath the colossal wings of massive jets. Late nights were dedicated to flight simulator practice sessions, and often he would opt to sleep on a worn cot in the hangar office, a choice born of necessity to conserve precious commuting time and meager funds. The irony of his situation was palpable. The very man entrusted with repairing multi-million-dollar jets found himself sleeping in the back of the very shop he was expected to clean. Yet despite the punishing schedule and the deep, persistent fatigue etched around his eyes, Ethan remained fiercely, almost defiantly devoted to his son's stability, a bedrock he refused to let crumble. Liam's lunchbox was always packed with meticulous care, each sandwich and fruit piece featuring small carved animal shapes, a detail only a loving present parent would bother with. His school uniforms, though simple, were unfailingly clean and pressed. Ethan never allowed Liam to witness his anxiety, offering only unconditional love in return. Liam, in turn, adored his father, often carrying a worn paper flag in his backpack, proudly scrolled with the heartfelt declaration, "Dad is the world's best pilot." This simple, earnest statement served as Ethan's true compass, guiding him through the relentless challenges. What the Northridge crew remained oblivious to, and what Ethan deliberately kept concealed, was his past. Before Amanda's death, Ethan had been a senior private aircraft test pilot recognized as one of the industry's elite, responsible for signing off on multi-million-dollar jets before their market release. He was brilliant, uncompromisingly skilled, and commanded a 6-figure salary, a testament to his expertise. However, he had deliberately stepped away from that high-stakes, high-travel career immediately after his wife's passing, prioritizing proximity and stability for Liam over prestige and professional glory. He needed the constancy of a ground job, a tether to ensure he was physically present for Liam, choosing never to flaunt his history or his formidable qualifications. Consequently, everyone from the lowliest cadet to the senior commanders simply assumed he was a technician, striving to reclaim a flying career from scratch, a man struggling to claw his way back from professional obscurity. In stark contrast to Ethan's unassuming presence stood Ava Hartley. She embodied the absolute picture of the perfect modern pilot forged by a military-trained background, holding the top performance rating for 3 consecutive years. Her dedication to absolute discipline was legendary, matched only by her almost total absence of visible personal emotion. Ava regarded the cockpit as a sacred, sterile sanctuary, a space utterly intolerant of any distraction. This rigid worldview, it was understood, was not an arbitrary construct, but was deeply rooted in trauma. Years ago, Ava had been a witness to a catastrophic incident where a co-pilot, momentarily distracted by a sudden severe family crisis, lost focus for a mere 3 seconds during a complex emergency landing. The devastating result was a crash that claimed the life of her most trusted friend, the lead pilot. The memory of that fleeting moment of personal preoccupation which led directly to professional catastrophe was burned indelibly into her mind. She had testified under oath that personal issues had no place in the air, convinced that emotional distraction was a lethal flaw. Therefore, when she first encountered Ethan, his worn clothes, his obvious exhaustion, and the inescapable knowledge that he was a single father burdened with paramount family responsibilities, her past trauma immediately resurfaced. She summarily dismissed him as an unacceptable risk factor, an intolerable variable in the precise equation of flight safety. Her refusal was not an act of personal cruelty, but a perceived professional necessity, a psychological shield against reliving her deepest trauma. The flight team's response to her dismissal of Ethan was immediate and laced with cruelty. Whispers followed Ethan like exhaust smoke. "Ava's right. Who can fly safely with someone like him?" Ethan heard the snide comments, the open judgments about his perceived poverty and instability. Yet he maintained his silence. He had deliberately chosen this path. He simply retreated to a quiet corner of the maintenance hangar. Sitting alone, he stared intently at the crayon drawing Liam had given him, silently repeating his mantra, "Keep going." For Liam, their words are just noise. One late afternoon, Ava found herself inadvertently softened. She walked into the crew lounge, her usual brisk pace slowing as she spotted Ethan. He wasn't with charts or technical manuals, but with Liam. The boy was giggling uncontrollably, a sound that rarely echoed in the sterile halls of the base. Ethan, despite his massive grease-stained hands, was surprisingly dexterous, teaching Liam how to fold a perfect paper airplane. This wasn't a simple dart. It was an intricate, aerodynamically complex glider. The pure joy radiating from Liam's face was unmistakable, and the look of deep protective affection Ethan returned was a depth of love Ava had never personally known. It was an image of simple, unshakable family warmth, an incongruous yet powerful scene in the stark military environment. Ava suddenly felt an unexpected, awkward tightness in her chest, a stark reminder of the isolated life she led, a life devoid of such spontaneous affection. She quickly backed away, the scene haunting her, a silent challenge to her rigid worldview. The close of that first act brought a concrete sign of Ethan's hidden life. Ava, observing Liam as he left the hangar later that evening, noticed a tiny old ID card tucked into the visor of the boy's miniature flight helmet. It bore an official-looking corporate logo and the name Cole Air Holdings. The logo was stylized, depicting a phoenix rising over a globe, a powerful global symbol of rebirth and ascent. Ava didn't recognize the company name, but the formality and the high quality of the card seemed oddly out of place for a mere technician's son. She felt a flicker of doubt, a nascent question about the man she had so quickly judged, a hint that her initial assessment might be profoundly mistaken. The following morning, the flight crew gathered for the pre-flight briefing, and the tension surrounding Ethan was palpable, a thick, unspoken cloud in the room. Ava, unyielding in her professional assessment, formally proposed replacing her co-pilot. She felt a moral obligation to protect the squadron from what she perceived as a genuine emotional threat, a potential liability in the unforgiving skies. William Hayes, a senior officer, leaned forward, his voice measured. "What is the reason Captain Hartley? Has Cole done anything wrong?" Ava met his gaze with a cold, clear stare. "He does not meet my standard of operational focus. In a high-stress environment, I require absolute, uncompromised attention." Every eye in the room pivoted to Ethan, pinning him like an obstacle. Archie Reynolds, a particularly arrogant young pilot fresh out of flight school, let out a loud, contemptuous laugh. "He can't afford a decent pair of boots. How can he fly alongside Captain Hartley? He should stick to fixing the jets, not flying them. We need pilots, not charity cases." Others chimed in, their voices laced with cruelty. "A single dad should focus on his kid, not trying to prove himself here. Go take your troubles elsewhere, Cole." The insults were brutal, direct, and specifically targeted his family status and perceived poverty. Ethan remained silent, his face betraying no emotion. He had perfected the art of absorbing the insults, a necessary defense mechanism. His only priority was to ensure Liam remained ignorant of the contempt his father endured. He often found himself praying that his son was too young to understand the meaning of scraps or charity case. The cruelty escalated later that day, hitting closer to home than ever before. Liam, bubbling with excitement to see his dad, ran onto the hangar floor during Ethan's brief lunch break, holding up a small, empty plastic container. Bernice Finch, a female pilot whose personal life was notably messy and often gossiped about, approached Liam with a saccharine smile. "A pity, you little guy. Your daddy was rejected by the best pilot today because he's too busy being a dad, not a flyer." She aimed the comment directly at Ethan, using Liam as an unwitting pawn. The words were designed to wound, twisting the knife in Ethan's already raw heart. Liam's smile vanished instantly. He lowered his head, his small shoulders slumping in visible dejection, the innocent joy draining from his face. Ava, observing the scene from a distance, felt a sharp, unexpected pang of guilt. For the first time, she saw the tangible, immediate damage her professional dismissiveness was inflicting on an innocent child, a child who only saw his father as a hero, oblivious to the scorn. She realized, with a sudden, sickening jolt, that her prejudice had made her an unwilling accomplice in this escalating cruelty, her rigid stance inadvertently contributing to Liam's pain. Unable to shake the image of Liam's crushed expression, Ava retreated to her office, desperately trying to logically justify her stance to find any validation for her deeply held fears. She pulled up Ethan's sparse official file, a thin document listing only his maintenance certification and reserve flight hours. "Why is this all there is?" she wondered aloud, tapping her finger on the blank space under previous high-level certifications. She desperately sought a technical flaw, a weak point, anything to validate her conviction that he was a risk. But his maintenance log was flawless. His repair work was meticulous, often exceeding industry standards. The profound lack of information, the glaring blank space, was the only anomaly she could find. That evening, driven by this professional anomaly, Ava happened to walk past the flight simulator lab. She stopped dead in her tracks. Through the viewing window, she saw Ethan. He was immersed in a complex high-altitude emergency scenario, a full engine flameout during a high-speed descent. She recognized the scenario immediately. It was a classified Level 5 test pilot sequence, typically requiring special command authorization and a biometric key for access. How did he even access that? She thought, her internal alarm bells ringing loudly. Ethan moved the controls with astonishing precision, executing maneuvers that were smoother and faster than any pilot in her elite team. He was speaking quietly into the microphone, his tone clinical, calculating G-forces and fuel burn rates with the casual ease of talking about the weather. Ava remained glued to the window, utterly transfixed. "Why is his technical skill so utterly perfect?" she mused. "That is the technique of a career test pilot, not a struggling reservist." The contradiction was becoming too vast, too glaring to ignore any longer. The next morning, Ava, now driven by genuine curiosity rather than suspicion, observed Ethan doing maintenance work on her assigned jet, a high-performance military trainer. She watched him not with a dismissive gaze, but with a burgeoning interest. He wasn't just tightening bolts or performing routine checks. He was meticulously replacing a complex sensor core within the hydraulic system, a delicate and highly specialized job usually reserved for external engineers with advanced training. He was working with a specialized set of tools that she knew cost more than a small car. She approached him, her tone less adversarial than usual, more investigative. A shift he likely noticed. "Who taught you to do that? That specialized work. I've seen contract engineers struggle with that." Ethan straightened, wiping a streak of oil from his cheek with a worn glove. His eyes, now level with hers, showed neither deference nor resentment, only a quiet, almost unsettling confidence. "I taught myself captain, and I've built things far more complex than you can imagine. I understand this machine down to its molecules." His cryptic reply only deepened Ava's confusion and burgeoning suspicion, fueling her relentless pursuit of the truth. Ava began to actively seek out small pieces of information about Ethan, driven now by a professional need to understand the anomaly, rather than to validate her prejudice. She meticulously checked the manifest cross-referencing names and qualifications. She scrutinized the co-pilot assignment log, searching for any inconsistency. Everything she found confirmed he was simply an entry-level reservist pilot. The contradiction, the jarring discrepancy between the man she observed and the records she consulted, was a riddle she felt compelled to solve. The true breakthrough came late one evening. Ava was systematically checking the supply closet adjacent to the mechanic's area, a routine task. Her gaze fell upon a small, unmarked steel box, Ethan's personal gear locker. Something an undeniable intuition prompted her to look inside. Tucked neatly beneath his worn helmet, she found a sheath of official documents marked with confidential corporate headers. The top document was an envelope boldly labeled, "Cole Flight Test Certification, Private Aircraft Ownership." Ava's hands trembled as she read the papers. The file detailed his high-level flight test credentials, including certifications for heavy specialized aircraft that few pilots in the world were qualified to touch. More astonishingly, the file confirmed Ethan Cole as the legal proprietor of a private heavy-class jet aircraft, a rare and phenomenally expensive asset. The single dad she had so casually dismissed as a struggling technician was in fact a man of significant hidden wealth and unparalleled skill. Her judgment, she realized with a terrible, slow-burning shame, had been entirely profoundly misplaced. The day of the live flight test arrived, stark and unforgiving, a culmination of escalating tensions and unspoken truths. Despite the internal shift in Ava's certainty, the assignment stood unchanged. Every pilot was mandated to fly with their original co-pilot pairing, which meant Ava and Ethan were unequivocally locked into the cockpit together. Ava boarded the aircraft, her movements stiff, her gaze deliberately avoiding Ethan's eyes entirely. She still hadn't fully processed the file she'd seen the overwhelming truth of his hidden identity. The atmosphere inside the cockpit was thick with unspoken tension, a palpable current of unresolved judgment and dawning realization. Ava's hands gripped the controls too tightly, her lingering lack of trust in her co-pilot manifesting as a physical rigidity in her posture. They received clearance for takeoff. The engines roared a deep, thrumming vibration that resonated beneath their seats. As they hurtled down the runway, rapidly gaining speed past V1 decision speed, the situation became instantly critical. A loud, jarring triple-tone alarm suddenly blared, a terrifying sound specific to primary flight control failure. The instrument panel lit up like a frantic Christmas tree ablaze with warnings: left wing sensor malfunction, hydraulic pressure drop, danger. The aircraft began to yaw violently, pulling sharply and uncontrollably to the left, threatening to leave the runway pavement at high velocity, a catastrophic ground loop imminent. Panic surged through Ava, cold and sharp. Her training dictated an immediate abort, hauling the stick back to stabilize the aircraft. Yet she knew instinctively that such a maneuver, while standard, would be too slow for the current high-speed turbulence and could rip apart the already compromised wing structure. It was a perilous dilemma. Ethan's hand appeared instantly covering hers, stopping her movement. His touch was light yet absolute in its authority. "Don't. You'll force the aircraft into the crosswind stream and risk structural failure. Maintain neutral stick." He didn't shout. He spoke with the calm certainty of someone who had practiced this exact failure simulation thousands of times, his voice devoid of any panic. Ava froze, stunned into momentary compliance by the sheer force of his composure and the absolute terrifying lack of fear in his voice. Ethan didn't wait for her agreement. He acted. He executed a lightning-fast, highly specialized sequence of compensating maneuvers, a series of precise micro-adjustments to the rudder and trims that were textbook senior test pilot procedure for a partial flight control failure. His mind worked at impossible speed, calculating wind velocity, runway remaining, and hydraulic bleed rate simultaneously. He manually switched the sensor input to the backup tertiary system while synchronously counteracting the yaw with minimal rudder input. His movements were fluid, perfect, the actions of a master pilot working a deeply familiar machine, almost an extension of his own body. In barely 12 seconds, the jet stabilized completely. The warning lights blinked off, and the aircraft was once again flying straight and true, roaring powerfully into the sky. Ava watched him, her eyes wide with shock, her heart still hammering wildly in her throat. Her body felt cold and weak, adrenaline draining her strength. Where did you learn that?" she stammered breathlessly. "That was specialized recovery, Mr. Cole. That required knowledge of the system's deep architecture." Ethan merely glanced at her, his expression returning to his usual, detached calm. "That, Captain, is the difference between flying and knowing how the aircraft is designed to fail. I've been in this line of work for a long time, longer than you know." After landing, Senior Commander William Hayes, alerted by the tower, met them on the tarmac, along with a team of technicians already swarming the jet, their faces a mixture of confusion and relief. What the hell happened up there? Who handled the malfunction, Hartley or Cole? Ava would not lie. Her pride was broken, shattered by the raw display of Ethan's skill, but her professional integrity demanded the truth. "He did, Commander. Cole identified and handled the failure, saving the aircraft and preventing a ground loop." A stunned silence fell over the assembled flight crew and officials. Disbelief was etched on every face. Yet the proof was undeniable. The jet was intact, the crew safe. Ethan offered no explanation. He simply stepped away from the crowd and walked toward the far side of the airfield, a secluded, rarely used zone behind the reserve hangars. Ava, her heart hammering with frantic curiosity and a new, terrible suspicion, followed him silently, her intuition screaming that the true answer was about to be revealed. Ethan stopped at a massive hangar easily 4 times the size of the maintenance shed where he worked. The hangar was shielded by high-tech security fences and marked only by a small, unassuming plaque. He paused, keyed in a complex biometric code, and the colossal sliding door began to groan open. The gap widened slowly, revealing the contents inside a gleaming 3-engine private business jet, a Cole Falcon 900LX. It was polished chrome featuring custom aerodynamic winglets in a subtle dark green and gold trim. This was an ultra-long-range class aircraft, astronomically expensive, owned only by the world's wealthiest individuals or large corporations. The interior, visible through the cabin window, hinted at custom leather and advanced avionics. Ava gasped, unable to utter a sound. She was looking at $80 million worth of private aviation parked casually behind the base. Ethan turned, meeting her gaze calmly. There was no hint of triumph or anger in his eyes, only quiet sincerity. "I am not just the co-pilot you refused to fly with, Captain," he stated, his voice ringing with quiet authority. "I am the owner of the plane you're looking at right now, and I am the pilot who signed off on its final test flight certification." He then explained his past, the scattered pieces of his life clicking into place. He was indeed a senior test pilot, having worked for his family's aviation investment group. The Cole name, she now realized, was synonymous with global aviation infrastructure. After Amanda's death, he made the deliberate choice to step down from the public-facing, high-profile executive role. He was the literal heir and owner of Cole Air Holdings. He had taken the maintenance job and the reservist flight hours only to remain grounded, physically present for Liam, and to teach his son the value of honest, dirty work. He wanted Liam to grow up appreciating labor, not worshiping wealth. As if on cue, the group of curious pilots who had followed Ava ran up only to freeze when they saw the name "The Jet" and the official registration documents clearly visible near the hangar door. Lieutenant Archie Reynolds, The young pilot who had snickered earlier stammered, his face white with immediate crushing shame. You own this private airfield, the Falcon." Ethan's reply was gentle but devastating. "I was never poor, but I choose not to show it. I prefer being judged on my character, not my collateral." Ava stood perfectly still, the full realization of her error a cold weight in her stomach. She looked at the polished chrome of the jet, then back at Ethan's oil-stained hands and worn boots. The contrast was a painful lesson in prejudice. She spoke the words that hung in the air for everyone to hear. "If I had known this, Mr. Cole, I would have been ashamed of how I treated you, and I owe you my life for the save just now." Ethan softened slightly, but did not let her off the hook completely. "I don't need your apology for my bank account, Captain Hartley. I only need it because my son had to hear you and your team speak poorly of his father. That is the only thing that matters." His words that he cared only for his son's dignity struck Ava to her core, reaching the deepest, most vulnerable point of her professional pride and personal shame. She saw that his commitment to Liam wasn't a distraction. It was the very foundation of his immense focus, providing him with a singular, unshakable grounding. From that day forward, the dynamic between Ava and Ethan underwent a profound, undeniable transformation. Ava initiated the change. The following day, she began by formally apologizing to Ethan in private, a stiff but honest admission of her prejudice, acknowledging the depth of her error and the trauma that had fueled it. She offered to work with him daily on aircraft checks, seeking to understand his unique blend of engineering and flight mastery. Ethan, in return, was unexpectedly patient, warm, and utterly contrary to the image the crew had created for him. He explained complex systems with the clarity of a dedicated teacher, revealing the intricate mechanics of the aircraft. He showed her the value of getting her hands dirty, teaching her to feel the small vibrations of an engine that charts could never truly capture. Liam, sensing the shift in atmosphere and the growing warmth between his father and Ava, instantly warmed to her. The boy would run to her, throwing his arms around her legs in a spontaneous hug. "Miss Ava, my daddy is a super pilot." He made the engine go quiet. He'd proudly exclaim. Ava would laugh, a genuine, unburdened sound she hadn't made in years, gently ruffling the boy's hair. It was the first time she had allowed herself a moment of softness and connection since her traumatic loss. Ava started frequenting the massive Cole Falcon 900LX hangar, not out of curiosity for the wealth, but out of a profound desire to learn. Ethan, recognizing her genuine commitment, began teaching her advanced flying techniques and maintenance skills, the closely guarded secrets of a test pilot. He taught her how to anticipate failure, not just react to it, how to read the subtle signs of a machine under stress. In the vast, quiet space of the hangar, away from the judgmental eyes of the base, their working relationship deepened into a genuine connection, a bond forged in shared purpose and respect. The other pilots, shamed into silence by the revelation of Ethan's true identity and Ava's public validation, could only watch as Ava, the invincible Captain Hartley, spent her evenings with the man they had mocked, learning from him, respecting him. Ava deliberately began to wear her new realization openly, a subtle but powerful statement. She no longer saw Ethan's worn boots as a sign of poverty, but as a symbol of his deliberate commitment to humility and hard work, a testament to his values. One peaceful evening, the three of them, Ethan, Ava, and Liam, sat beneath the massive wing of the Falcon jet, the enormous aircraft providing a surreal protective canopy. They were sharing a cardboard box of cheap takeout pizza, a deliberate choice over expensive dining, a small gesture reinforcing Ethan's values. They watched the orange glow of the sunset flood the hangar, casting long, warm shadows. The scene was utterly incongruous, a billionaire's plane, a world-class pilot, and simple pizza. But it felt right, profoundly right. Ava sighed a deep, relaxed breath. "I've never had a life like this," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. I've only ever had a career." Ethan smiled his eyes on Liam, who was happily chasing hangar shadows, his laughter echoing softly. "Peace comes from the small things, Ava. The things you can hold on to, not the things you have to prove." That evening, Ava finally opened up completely. She told Ethan the full raw story about the co-pilot who lost concentration and the friend she lost in the catastrophic crash, the trauma that had shaped her into the rigid pilot she had been. Ethan listened silently, without judgment, simply offering the quiet, understanding space she needed to heal a balm for her long-held pain. He didn't offer advice. He offered understanding, recognizing that her rigidity was just fear wearing a mask of discipline. Over many shared afternoons of work and practice, Ava realized Ethan was the only person in her entire career she could trust implicitly in the cockpit. His focus was absolute, his actions driven not by money or ambition, but by the same fierce protective dedication he had for his son. She saw that personal baggage wasn't a liability. In Ethan's case, his profound commitment to Liam was his ultimate strength, providing him with a singular, unshakable grounding that few others possessed. Liam's innocent eye captured their connection perfectly, a testament to his clear perception of genuine human bonds. He presented Ava with a new drawing, 3 stick figures, the man, the woman, and the boy standing beside the Falcon beneath a giant smiling sun. In the drawing, Ava was lovingly holding Ethan's hand, a symbol of their growing closeness. Ava looked at the drawing, a gentle, tender feeling stirring in her heart, a feeling she couldn't quite name but desperately wanted to keep and nurture. The act closed with Ava making a tentative, vulnerable request, a mirror of Ethan's own hidden commitment to his family. "If you two don't mind the trouble," she said softly, looking from Liam's smiling face to Ethan's calm eyes. "I'd like to stay around longer. I feel more focused here than I have in years, more truly myself." One busy morning, the flight team was called to an emergency meeting, the air thick with anticipation. Commander William Hayes announced a crucial structural change. Ava Hartley was being formally appointed as the permanent chief pilot of the facility's new elite rapid response squadron. The prestigious position required her to select one fixed co-pilot. The entire room buzzed with speculation and anticipation. Everyone assumed she would choose the most aggressive, highest-ranking pilot available, certainly not the single-dad maintenance technician, even if he did own a private jet. They expected her to prioritize status and rank the traditional metrics of success in their world. Ava stood straight, meeting the expectant gazes of the entire room. She waited for the murmurs to subside, then cut the tension with a single clear statement. "I choose Ethan Cole." The room exploded in shocked whispers, a cacophony of disbelief. Lieutenant Archie Reynolds was the first to object, leaping to his feet, his face red with indignation. "Commander, he's merely a technician. His rank doesn't qualify him for this level of flight command." Ava stepped forward, her military bearing perfect, her voice resonant with conviction and logic, cutting through the objections. "His rank is irrelevant. He is a senior flight test pilot, qualified for systems and recoveries that are beyond the scope of this entire squadron's training. Furthermore, he is the only pilot here whose focus is absolute because he has something real to fly home to. He is the pilot I trust most." Ethan, waiting just outside the briefing room with Liam, heard every single word, his breath hitched. He was completely overwhelmed, his eyes stinging with sudden, unexpected tears. He finally had his professional validation delivered by the person who had once been his fiercest critic, a profound moment of triumph. When Ava exited the room, walking away from the chaos her decision had created, she found Ethan waiting. He took a steadying breath, his usual calm momentarily broken by the surge of emotion. Ava stepped toward him, the confidence of the boardroom softening into something deeply personal, something hopeful. She didn't speak of flying. She spoke of permanence of a future shared. "If you accept this partnership," she said, her voice low and filled with a rare vulnerability, "I want to fly with you for life in the cockpit and outside of it." Ethan smiled, a slow, genuine curve of his lips, a profound happiness radiating from him. I had a plan, Ava. A simple life, and then you happened. He paused, looking down at his son, his compass. I will only accept if Liam agrees to share his dad with a chief pilot. Liam, understanding the gravity of the moment through the emotion in their voices, rushed forward, wrapping his arms fiercely around both of them. I agree. We can be a super-flying family, he shouted joyfully. The two adults laughed, a sound of relief and shared happiness under the late morning sun. The weight of their past prejudices, the burden of their hidden lives, had finally lifted, replaced by a light shared future. Later, in the vast quiet of the Cole Falcon 900LX hangar, the polished metal of the private jet reflected the golden light of the afternoon. It stood as a silent witness to their journey, a monument not just to wealth or engineering marvel, but to the worth found not in ownership, but in character. Ava took Ethan's hand, lacing her fingers with his calloused, greased ones, a symbolic gesture of acceptance and connection. Thank you, Ethan, she whispered. Thank you for teaching me that the best co-pilot is the one who has something worth fighting for. Thank you for not letting me fly alone anymore. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, looking at his new family, Ava and Liam, his quiet life now complete, filled with purpose and companionship. No one, he replied, his voice soft with promise. No one was ever meant to fly alone forever.